writer to win an award, it's not just the recognition, it's the satisfaction that you've been able to do your job and that's been recognised by other people.
And they've all been really interesting books. They're very different books, and it's been really, really interesting.
By definition, you've got an incredibly eclectic mix of people there. Some of them born in different countries, brought up in different ways, and some of them with challenges that have nothing to do with their sport to overcome.
And this is one of the most uplifting stories I've ever read. I mean, it's a story of a man playing rugby, going through all that problem of being gay in a sport as masculine and rough and tough as that is.
What he has done is potentially, you know, one of the most important things in modern sport in terms of being honest about his sexuality. And
Gareth is talking about players that I also know, so lots of the conversations went on in my head with the original accents.
the one thing that kind of didn't sit well with me and that I kind of kept noting down examples was it wasn't his voice, and I felt there were certain sentences that I just couldn't imagine him saying early on.
It's a fascinating book, beautifully written and highly, highly recommended. I once went around the Isle of Man course on the back of a Norton bike, that's how long ago it was, driven by Jeff Duke, and I've never been as frightened in all my life.
Anyone who rides on the TT is a madman.
He's an extraordinary rider. I think lots of people would pick it up because they've seen Guy doing other things on TV and actually learn a huge more about motorcycle racing, which is a sport I care hugely about.
I could smell the street he lived on. I could hear the kids playing outside. I felt it was a really true, and I'm from just up the road in West Yorkshire, and I've seen those streets, and he described them brilliantly, and I felt like I was immersed in his childhood.
He talks about looking forward to driving into a bend, a blind bend, at 170 miles an hour. Oh, and knowing that he might come out the other end, not looking like he did when he went into it.
It was full of angst, full of anxiety-inducing stories.
The sort of simmering anger that's behind a lot of his exchanges.
There are hallmarks of a quality writer there, the way it's structured, all that. So from that point of view, it's a very good read indeed.
The extraordinary bits were really his immersion into management and the lack of communication that was going on between the Sunderland hierarchy and him as manager. I found that extraordinary in modern football.
Most of these books are ghost-written. I'm glad to say that Nicole Cook's book is not. It's a very good book and very well written, and she deserves credit for that.
She talks about the scrapbook she kept, and I think the book very much shows that. It's her talking us through these extraordinary books she's got of all her memories.
I understand her a lot more from the book, and that's also a good thing. I think when you read a biography, you kind of get, oh, okay, I kind of cut you a bit of slack now because you had a really tough time.
It's a wonderful book about determination. She's very clear-minded, very. You'd hate to cross her. No motorcycle against her. But she's excellent. She's very good indeed. I much enjoyed that book.
I thought that the Chris Froome book was incredibly well written. It gave an insight into cycling, and not just that, it gave an insight into the early years.
I found that his upbringing and his childhood really interesting. His time in the bush and the way he learnt to ride a bike and where he learnt to ride a bike and who he learnt to ride bikes with. It's so extraordinary. And
it's an interesting book. It's of course, and it's a sport which is fascinating. It's not one of my favourite sports, but it is fascinating about the dedication, the training, and all that.
It was just an extraordinary story which I hadn't appreciated at all until I read the book. I think cycling has probably, for all the right reasons, Bradley won the first Tour de France for a British rider, and I think that's probably, with that big achievement, and I hadn't really paid a huge amount of attention to Chris Froome's achievements, and actually reading the book, he's an extraordinary character. I wasn't sure what I was going to make of it when I started reading. Actually, it was a really interesting story, and again, in a way I hadn't expected it to be. I
was very moved by the family circumstances earlier in the book.
He has 6 Ferraris. One is worth £2 million. But I did go from a bit when I read in a motor magazine that he had one of his Ferraris. He ordered the Ferrari team to have a tartan interior. Now, anybody who does that is sacrilegious. I mean, they should be strapped to the bonnet of a Ferrari and driven around the racetrack at vast speeds.
Some of the bits that either made me laugh about, how he has to have everything really organised, and how his greatness, if you like, or his sporting achievement comes out in lots of different ways in his life, and I thought it was just generally interesting.
This is, it is. It's just a laundry book. It's I mean, I'm saying this in the nicest possible way. It's funny and all that, and he doesn't take himself seriously, but it's about ironing his pants and all that sort of stuff. It's a charming read, and he's obviously a guy you'd like to have a pint with. It's good.